Hi, welcome. Angie Hayes here. And today I've decided to jump on with another short video about external validation of all things. And yet again, this is another thing that's been coming up in the therapy room quite frequently recently. So I thought it was worth a little video just to shed some light on what's going on when we seem to need external validation from people all the time before we can think, move, or do anything else. So putting external validation into perspective, then, we all need some form of feedback. Of course we do. We all need some form of acknowledgement. We're human beings. That's healthy. Because in order to self-regulate and to learn and to grow and develop into rounded whole human beings, it's essential for us to have that growth that comes from good constructive feedback. And, you know, but there's always a balance. It's as with everything, it's a balancing act here. So you need to be able to take instruction and constructive criticism from others in order to understand where those growth areas are. But the problem comes when you, outside of approval from others, becomes your be all and end all. That's the complete other end of the spectrum. And neither is it healthy to totally disregard the opinions and views of other people and only seek out those people that have the same opinions and views as you. And goodness knows we see a lot of that nowadays, don't we? But it's not healthy because it doesn't allow you to develop a sense of the wider world around you and hear other views about how other people perceive the world. Nor does it encourage you to become a more rounded person. You just become very entrenched in your views. So you shouldn't completely ignore feedback, but that balance is when you take healthy constructive feedback from others whilst not relying on it. Not relying completely on outside approval for your sense of self-worth. So this external validation need, I believe, comes from a lack of a sense of self-worth. It's definitely a self-worth issue. And I can confirm that with everything I see that goes on in this therapy room. And, you know, when we tip over into that over-reliance on what other people think, then it can become a really tough place for us to exist in, to be honest, which is where the whole world of overthinking is. Overthinking, overcompensating, people-pleasing, catastrophizing. You can generally get into a real pickle with all of this stuff. But importantly, another thing that crops up is not being able to confront or disagree with people who when they're challenging your thoughts and beliefs. So someone either approves of you or they disapprove of you. So basically, you're ascribing your sense of self-worth over to the approval of others. So you need to be aware of what you're doing, little loves, if you are caught up in this cycle. Okay, so it's all very well knowing you're there and knowing it's probably not the best thing, but where does this shit come from? Right, okay, so some of this is based on research, some of this is based on my own experience of dealing with this issue. And it takes a while to unravel. It can take time. We need to go away and reflect and reassess and rebuild. So when I deal with clients that are constantly looking for this evaluation, this external validation and evaluation of themselves, it's maybe not a quick process and it's maybe not an intense process. It's a process where we spend a bit of time together. They go off to reflect, they go off to put in, introduce a few changes. And then we have another little period of focusing on the next area and the next area. But let's hit on these areas where I think this sense of not approving of yourself, not having your sense of self-worth comes from. And the first one is upbringing. And of course, you know, I've done videos on dysfunctional parenting, but it's not just upbringing. In your life as a child, you come across school teachers and classmates, and if any of them are in dysfunctional family relationships or narcissistic relationships, then that can come out in their behavior, which will affect you. And then that affects how you behave in the workplace. And if you're in the wrong culture, you know, it doesn't fit you. You get nasty bosses and all sorts of stuff like that going on. But upbringing, let's focus on upbringing, because I've been doing an awful lot of learning and growth all around narcissism, narcissistic parenting, and the impact that narcissistic parenting has. And most of us will sit there and think, a lot of clients say to me, yeah, but I had a great upbringing. I didn't have dysfunctional family. And you think, because dysfunction and narcissism, and I'm not going to cover narcissism in this short video. I will do other videos about it, I promise, when I've completed my learning on the subject, so I can come to you fully armed with all the knowledge, because we're only just getting the awareness of the impact of narcissistic people have on society. So narcissism is on a spectrum, and in the middle of that spectrum is a healthy person who can stand up for their own values and beliefs, and for the values and beliefs of others. They're not looking to manipulate anyone. They don't have an agenda. Yeah, they've just got their own belief system, and they're open to other ideas, and they're open to challenging new ideas that don't fit with their beliefs. Healthy. And we got when you think of narcissists, you think of them at the other end of the spectrum, your Donald Trumps, yeah, your Machiavellian types, and your psychopaths like Jimmy Savile or Myra Hindley, people like that. They're psychopaths. You tend to think of narcissism being that end of the spectrum. There is another end of the spectrum. And these are people that use victimhood as manipulation, getting you to do things by crying and, acting the victim. So you need to help them. They're still manipulative. They're thinking about their own needs and not yours, but they're manipulative in a different way. But as I said, I'm not here to cover narcissism. But I am getting you to question, if you thought, well, I didn't have a really nasty parents, did they try and manipulate you? Because sometimes this is where this sense of your sense of self-worth isn't as important as the needs of other people comes from. Okay, so just think about that one. Traumatic events are another one. So I always say trauma is in the eye of the beholder. It doesn't have to be a big, huge traumatic event like a car accident or a plane accident or anything like that, or an explosion. It can be just a drip feed of one thing after another occurring in life. You lose your mum, and then you lose your dad, and then you lose your dog, and then you lose your marriage, and before you know it, you lose your job. There we are. There's a perfect cocktail, and it needn't be that bad either. You could just be struggling a bit, and then you have a really bad day in the office where someone tips you over the edge, and you're done. You just tip over the edge. You go into that survival instinct and you stay there. And trauma basically remains unprocessed in the brain, and it starts causing all sorts of issues. Most of us deal with trauma reasonably effectively, but some of us, a small percentage of us, don't. And so that can absolutely sap your self-confidence, your self-worth, your motivation, because you're just trying to hold it tight to everything, hold everything safe. You're in survival. So then you allow others to take a leading role. So your whole sense of self becomes skewed, because this is a self-worth issue. High achievers are another interesting one. If as a child you were naturally talented at something and you always got great feedback for your sporting prowess or your academic prowess, and then you get out into the wide world and you're not quite as good at something that you haven't learned. And that's because high achievers have relied so heavily on the external validation of others that they haven't actually gone on that journey of growth and development. And we all have to do it at some point. We have to go outside of our comfort zone. It happens throughout our lives. We're outside of our comfort zone and we're on the development journey. And so many people I see on this journey want the destination. They don't want to go through the growth bit. Well, it doesn't work like that, sadly. You have to go through that period of growth and learning and becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable to get to that place where you are comfortable and you're made stronger by it. And these people haven't accepted or learned to self-regulate because they're so used to it just comes naturally. The validation has always been there. So why isn't it now? Why couldn't I do that thing perfectly? I must be rubbish because I didn't get that thing done properly. So there's something wrong with me. So I need to get other people to tell me it's okay. And now we're getting into the territory of the next thing, imposter syndrome. Now I'm setting up a course on imposter syndrome for the general public and for other therapists to help clients with imposter syndrome. I think imposter syndrome plays a big part here, because imposter syndrome, I feel, in all of the research I've done and all of the people I've helped through it, it's down to two key elements in life. One is how you measure your level of competence, and the other is that someone somewhere in your life has instilled in you a lack of belief somewhere. And it could be one of those traumatic events where somebody just said that one thing that you thought, oh my God, I can't do this. They questioned you, they doubted you, or it could be worse than that. It could be people who, I mean, I've had clients who've got parents who, whatever they've done, the parent has done something better. So they can never measure up to this. So they just don't do anything, put anything out there, or show how great they are at what they do, because this person will always have done it better. And it can be something as simple as that, but it's come from someone somewhere in your past. It's come from somewhere, and it's how you measure competence. So how do you measure competence? Not going into, this isn't a video about imposter syndrome, but some people are real perfectionists and they think everything's got to be absolutely perfect or it isn't right. No such thing as perfectionism. So you're setting up a really unrealistic expectation, because what's perfect to me isn't perfect to you, and vice versa. So it's just a silly way of measuring your competence, because it's impossible to achieve it. Then you get people who are like your natural geniuses, your high achievers, who not used to going on that growth journey. So when they start a growth journey and they don't get it right first time, it's a huge failure. They feel uncomfortable in learning the lessons. Or you get soloists. So I recognize the soloist in me. And I think most people who are brought up in dysfunctional families and have at some point got to go it alone because they've got no one they can rely on around them, they become soloists, and they imagine that they should be able to do everything right themselves and find all the answers themselves and deal with everything themselves. And they struggle to ask for help. They're fiercely independent. And so when they can't find the answers, then they just avoid, give up. This is imposter syndrome. It's not doing stuff and not being afraid to actually go out there and achieve stuff you're capable of achieving, because some mental block is holding you back. And that's where these things come from. Comes down to self-worth. And the final one I'm just going to touch on here, because I think it's important, is personality type. Yeah. And I cover personality types with every client I see, because I think it's important. But what I'll say about personality types here, do a lot of work on this with clients, is 70% of the people I see in here are of a personality type that we would call a people pleaser. They take so much responsibility for the happiness of others to the detriment of themselves and their own lives and their own needs. They're so worried about what everyone else thinks that they're never authentic to themselves. And then that's what starts getting them into a pickle, because they start getting resentful and they start suffering with anxiety and depression and all of these things, because they're not living the life they're meant to be living for them. They're living life through other people, and they're not meeting their own needs and honouring their own belief and value system. And I'm coming on to that next. So we work to decide on which aspects of that personality type are serving you and which ones aren't, because some will not be serving you. And it's true of all personality types. We have to choose which version of ourselves we're going to show up as. And if you're showing up as a people pleaser who needs constant validation, how do you think that looks? I'll leave that one with you. Okay, so how do we learn to self-regulate then? How do we learn to approve of ourselves? Well, the first and most important thing is you have to know yourself, know thyself. I've said this in other videos and I'll say it again. This is the most important thing you can ever do for yourself, is take some time out to understand yourself. What are your values and beliefs? Not those of your mentor, your coach, your boss, your parents, your values and beliefs. What matters to you? What drives you? Yeah. Because you don't have to change your beliefs to fit in with anyone else, unless, of course, they're sabotaging beliefs. And they're sabotaging you, like, I don't feel I'm good enough. That's a sabotaging belief. We don't want that. We want to reframe that. So this is one of the key areas that solution focused therapies works with, is getting a client to understand themselves, what drives you, what motivates you. And most people sit there and say, I don't really know. They've never really thought about it. But I even know people that know this and they still bloody well seek external validation from other people, even though they know that, because they're not. And the reason they do that is because they can't be true to their values, because they don't think they're worthy of them. It's quite worrying that we've conditioned people in society to think like this. So this knowing yourself, if you want an exercise to take out of this video, this is the perfect one. Work on your values and beliefs. I can give you 3 off the top of my head that are really important to me. I like people with integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't give me bullshit. I like people with integrity who don't make false promises. Authentic people who are true to themselves. I don't mind them coming at me and telling me I'm crap. I haven't got a problem with that. In fact, they probably get a bit of banter back, you know. But it gives me feedback to think, oh, maybe I should have handled that a bit differently. Maybe I shouldn't have said that at that time. You know, so I like people who are authentic, not just rude and think they can say what they like, but people who will come from a place of authenticity, which means they are trying to influence, not control, but influence the way you're thinking to a slightly different view that might be more beneficial for you. So they actually care about you if they're authentic. What else matters to me? What are my other values? I like loyalty and trust. I like people I can trust, people who are loyal. I don't like people who'll throw you under the bus at the first opportunity. So you can see that I'm not going to go through all of them, but I know for the most part my values. I know what's important to me. And when I come across people that I don't think can be loyal, or who aren't coming from a place of authenticity and they're just trying to wind me up, then I discount their beliefs straight away. Not interested. No, you don't come from a place of authenticity. So the next step in this way of self-regulating, getting yourself into a place where you can self-regulate, is to become consciously aware and very clear of your motivations for seeking external validation. Why are you doing it? Because are you prepared that somebody might come back with some constructive criticism, something you don't want to hear or you weren't expecting to hear? Because if the answer is no, then you need to speak to my amazing business coach, Adam Brooks from Sales Academy, because what he will tell you is you don't want validation now. Well, you do want validation, but you want attention. You don't want feedback. You want attention. You want someone to agree with you, and therefore you want attention. So be very clear what your motivation is for seeking that external validation. Be logical, bring it back to facts, take the emotion out of it, and be clear. Why do you need it? And it's okay if you know the real reason and you think, I'm doing this for attention, and you do it consciously because, oh, I just want a bit of attention today. That's okay. Hope it makes you feel good. But keep watching. Brings me on to the next one then. The Angie Hayes view of the world. No unicorn dust or fairy farts here, no. So who are you seeking external validation from? Who are they? What are their credentials, yeah? What are their credentials in your life or on a specific topic that you need validation on that you've just been working on? What are their credentials? Do you love them, or do you trust them, or do you respect them? And do they love you or trust you or respect you as a client, or whatever your relationship might be? If you answered no to any of those 3 words I've just uttered, love, trust, and respect, then seriously, what the absolute F are you seeking external validation from this person or these people for? If you need external validation from anyone that doesn't meet that criteria, then what's its real value? Think about it. What's its real value? Do they care about you? Do they give a shit? Because their input in your life has about as much worth as a like on a Facebook post. It's meaningless. So just remember that, little lovelies. In all of this, remember that we are human. We're human beings, and we all like a little bit of attention from time to time. And we all like a little bit of acknowledgement. And sometimes we play the clown to get it. That's absolutely fine, because we know we just want to get attention. We know we just want to make someone laugh. That's okay. But if the way you are seeking that validation is making you uncomfortable, then you know what you need to do to self-regulate. Be aware of why. Who are you asking for it from? Why is it important to you? And who are you? And if, as I said earlier, if you want to take anything out from this today, go and do that work on who you are. And it can be difficult to do it on your own, I know. So ask someone to help you if you need to. But go away and really think about who you are, because this is one of the key things I have to work on with people before we can get anywhere. But remember, you're a human being, so be kind to yourself. Most importantly, just understand those motivations. And I hope you found this beneficial, my little darlings. So I will leave it there, and I will wish you love. Take very good care of yourselves, little loves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.